Welcome to the CEO Tech Talks podcast, where vision meets impact. I am your host, Ambreen Ahmed. Each episode, I sit down with exceptional leaders who are shaping the future of business, technology, and transformation. This show is about more than just success. It's about clarity, purpose, and those bold decisions that light the way forward. Join me as we uncover the insights, challenges, and breakthroughs from today's most inspiring voices. Leaders who are redefining what it means to lead in a rapidly changing world. This is CEO Tech Talks. Let's dive in. Welcome. Today's guest is Samantha Bonamassa. She is a dynamic entrepreneur redefining corporate ethics and compliance management. Samantha founded Coast to Coast Compliance to simplify how businesses manage risk, ethics programs, and regulatory alignment. Her career spans work with Fortune 500 firms, startups, and international clients, giving her a panoramic view of how culture, communication, and compliance intersect. Welcome, Samantha. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Well, let's get into it. Tell us a little bit about yourself and everything that led you to starting Coast to Coast Compliance.
Yeah, so I launched Coast to Coast just over 7 years ago. I love what I do. I've always been in the securities compliance space since being out of law school, at least. And I call myself what I've coined an accidental entrepreneur because I didn't necessarily know I wanted to start my own firm, but it has become such a gift. Like I said, I really enjoy what I do. I love getting to apply the rules to different types of firms and excited to be an entrepreneur and have been in this space for, like I said, 10 plus years.
What does a typical day look like for you as a compliance leader and CEO?
So being a CEO, my day to day is a lot different depending on the day. I have any number of things I'm doing for my clients, getting them registered with the SEC, running compliance trainings. I luckily get to be flexible with the types of engagements I take on. So it might be a lot of calls I stack for one day. It might be I have to give myself the afternoon off because I'm preparing materials for clients. So it really just depends on what I've got going on. I try to be really structured to my clients' needs and not be everything for everyone. So my deliverables and projects and engagements are highly scoped to what can bring value to a particular client now and as they grow and evolve. So none of my days are the same. They're very, very different. They often start kind of early and end kind of late. But like I said, I've got a lot of flexibility with my time and how I structure what I do.
Well, that's a good problem to have. And to be a CEO, no day is the same. So what inspired you to launch Coast to Coast Compliance?
Yeah, so like I said, I've been in the compliance, like the regulatory compliance space from the moment I got out of law school. But I worked in-house and then I worked at other compliance consulting firms. And I found that there was a lot of what I'd call kind of turnover, whether it be different clients, the staff at the firms. And these were smaller firms. But what I did learn from them was so much. I mean, it was I amassed what would have taken me a decade's worth of time in really abbreviated periods of time working at compliance consulting firms. Just on the basis of we had so many clients and there were so many things to do for each of these clients. I feel very grateful that it was, the days of kind of 100-hour work weeks. So I learned so much. I got to apply what I was learning to so many different types of clients that were just getting started, 100 million assets under management, all the way up to clients with a few dozen billion assets under management. But because I learned so much when I kind of wanted to pivot in my career out of the compliance consulting world, little did I know I'd end up right back in it. But I thought I wanted to go in-house and just sort of be an attorney for one client. And then I quickly realized I'd be doing my very niche background and experience a bit of a disservice. I had just worked with so many, at that point, I'd already worked with like over 100 clients in my first 3 years. That I realized just working at a big law firm or just working in-house wouldn't really be intellectually stimulating enough for me. So luckily I got really good at what I do and really enjoyed the type of people I get to work with. So it was sort of by accident that I decided, I guess I should launch my own firm. And then I did. So that's how Coast to Coast Compliance was born. And like I said, I've discovered just how flexible and unique being a business owner can be. And it has evolved over the past 7 years quite a bit, but it was really born by accident.
The accidental
Yeah.
entrepreneur, as you mentioned earlier. So, what gap did you see in how companies manage risk or culture?
As far as like the industry, at least, the compliance industry, I guess, it's either really large compliance consulting firms or kind of the smaller niche compliance consulting firms like I created. I would hear a lot that those that chose a larger compliance consulting firm would often get kind of passed around to various associates and not really feel like they had the continuity of who was helping them with their compliance program. And again, that was sort of what led me to realize I wanted to start my own firm and keep up with that and really be the face, the person that's doing the work for them, really their partner in compliance. I'm like their right hand person in compliance. As far as in the industries I work in, right? Financial advisors, a lot of really private equity firms, hedge funds, venture capital. That's my predominant space in the investment management world. I found that a gap they have is often they either have a really great compliance staff, as so many employees view on their compliance program. They might have had it for a really long time, and everyone involved has already been at the firm for a really long time, so can't quite offer that independent, objective view on the program, how it's running. So I found that to be a kind of trigger for needing an outside consultant. Otherwise, you've got firms that they might have someone really bright, a great lawyer, but that's really just not a compliance person. They might be dual or triple hatted, the CFO, they might be just the GC, and sort of have become tasked with the chief compliance officer role on the basis of these SEC registered investment advisors are mandated to have a chief compliance officer. And I find that for those clients, the gap there is they don't really want to do compliance, though it needs to be done. They don't necessarily have the resources or, frankly, the time to do compliance or to learn something altogether new and taking away from the day to day of what that they are really there for. So that's another place that I can kind of come in, be a resource to them while they might hold the title of chief compliance officer. They really can outsource as much as they need to make sure they're able to focus on their main work, feeling comfortable that compliance is getting done and not just meeting expectations, but exceeding the expectation of what a regulator might expect.
Okay. How has your view of what good compliance looks like changed since you started?
Yeah, I find that frankly, good compliance has remained relatively the same since I've started, right? Like it needs to be a program that is in line with what regulators require, right? Generally, I work in the SEC side of things. So it needs to be all of the non negotiables that an SEC compliance program requires. But what I found is those that take it a step further and they might not be required to do something, but they are doing all of the best practices. That is what really sets someone apart is them having familiarity with what's required. And like I said, in instances where they don't have a dedicated person, the understanding that, okay, we need to get another resource to help us with compliance to be the best that we can be. So it really, good compliance is just the initial creation or the revision of what was previously maybe not a great compliance program, and kind of like that willingness to understand that while certain things have remained the same for decades, there are always new and evolving rules or the application of them depending on the type of client and how the client themselves might have grown. So I'd say good compliance is driven by like a willingness to put the time, energy, and effort into it. And then if they can't do it internally, to realize that there are outside resources that can really help bring them across the line and exceed the expectations of what you'd hope would be in a compliance program during an SEC exam.
And how has AI automation changed compliance?
In a lot of ways, a lot of compliance consulting firms have platforms associated with what they do. A lot of vendors offer unique platforms for a lot of the kind of non-negotiables that come with a compliance program. So that could range from documenting prospective clients, investors, projects internally. Investment advisors are required to maintain their communications. So that's like electronic surveillance of emails. There are new and exciting kind of repositories that assist advisors with the to do, so to speak, of reviewing emails, reviewing IMs, reviewing communication of their firm. And the platforms have just kind of exploded over the years. There were very few vendors in the space that made compliance easier. Now there are any number of different platforms and vendors. So I find that it's also driven by if you've got a lot of employees, AI is especially helpful to keep track of the record obligations that you might have, personal training, gifts and entertainment, outside business activities. These platforms and various technologies can be extremely helpful for larger firms or even smaller firms with a lot of employees. There are also benefits to a smaller firm or a firm with a few employees to manage some of what they need to keep track of on the day to day. Like I said, there's really any number of these, even a marketing material. That's something that is required to be reviewed if you're a one-person shop or if you're a 100-person shop. There are new firms that actually have an AI component that can assist with the review of marketing material. The new marketing rule that came out a couple years ago now is like a 700-page rule release. So it's hard for anyone to get their mind around it or really like what matters to me is what I often hear. And it's like, oh, so many parts of it matter to you. So how can a firm make sure that they're doing everything they need to do under a new rule? Well, AI can really help, and AI can look through a marketing material piece and help hone in on what you might need to think twice about, what superlatives you might need to tone down because you're promising something you can't substantiate. So there's a lot that AI has done to sort of change the landscape of compliance. Though I will say, and I might be jumping the gun on one of the next questions, but I I find that no matter how good AI is, because I always get asked, like, are you afraid AI is going to take over your role? No, not at all. What people like about what I do, especially, is it's an element of relationship building, right? You might be able to, you could chat GPT something to get an idea if you've got a question, but I find that a lot of people want to hear it from someone that's been doing it for over a decade, very specifically in this space, because AI is not going to know the inner workings of various different companies and how the rules have applied to them and how it's worked in an SEC exam. Like they want a human behind the scenes. So while AI can be very beneficial and change the landscape a bit, I feel confident that I'll always be able to provide something that AI can't provide. And it's like a passion and enthusiasm for what I do and kind of bringing that human element to a program, to a firm, and just trying to help them the best that I can.
I agree with you completely. Human connection, no level of AI can replace that. Most AI needs to be operated by humans.
Right, exactly.
So the oversight needs to be there, I think.
Yes.
That'll never go away. So, what major shifts are you seeing right now in your industry, and how is that shaping your business strategy?
Okay, interestingly, like a major shift that's pretty recent is, for example, the government shutdown. So the SEC is working on a really, really limited bandwidth. So I've got some clients that have applications in either through me, like getting registered with the SEC through me, or did it on their own, did some sort of self-help to kind of get started. And there are no approvals going through right now. They just don't have the staff to kind of push approvals. So it's a little bit of a pause that otherwise it would have taken 30 days, 45 days from start to finish for the, SEC's team that works on these to kind of get them across the board and registered. And there's been a bit of a halt. So there's been, and even previous to that, there had been some delays with respect to international advisors. So I named my firm Coast to Coast Compliance to kind of get across the idea that I don't just work domestically. While a majority of my clients are from the east to west coast of the United States, I really work with firms all across the world. So I found that the firms that are internationally based, that either have clients in the US, whether it's humans and investors or clients for separately managed accounts, or just a US fund or a US presence of some kind that still need to become SEC registered, there's been a bit of a shift where they're taking a lot longer to push through these approvals
Mm-hmm.
and have the firms actually get started and kind of really truly launch. So that's been kind of unique. I haven't shifted my business I know that things will shape up to where these are going to get approved, they'll go through. And what I'm doing in the meantime is just prepping all the other components of the compliance program that need to be done, kind of front loading the work. We know they're going to get approved. So I'm just spending the time now building out a compliance manual and a code of ethics for the firm, teaching them what they need to do, providing the chief compliance officers with the tools, the resources, compliance calendars, ways to track what they're doing, compliance trainings with the staff so that the second the approval goes through, the staff is ready and waiting to kind of hit the ground running. All the compliance to-dos that are due at the onset, they're already done and ready. So it's not shifting what I do too much. I try to get everything done so a client is kind of ready to go once they receive approval anyways. It's just right now the approvals are taking a bit longer.
Okay. I wonder how that slowdown because of the shutdown is affecting your client's business. Is it just a waiting game?
It's just a waiting game and it's really just for new registrants. So it's not having as well. I guess I could say that I think for my clients that are already established clients, it's probably giving them a little bit of a sense of relief that there's not much staff. So I would bet that they're like right now, I don't have any SEC exams. I often have a couple a year. Sometimes that's how I get clients is a client will, find me by Googling and realize I do SEC exams. I've done dozens of them. I haven't had one in a couple months. So I wonder too if that's probably a benefit to many of my existing clients that are established clients, not as worried probably about SEC exams at this time this year, just because there's been a bit of slowdown and there's just less regulators out there.
What's working well for you in your business right now, and what's been frustrating?
This is going to be kind of an interesting answer. There's not too much that frustrates me, frankly. Like, I really love what I do. I love both the people I get to work with, the deliverables I get to work on, which I'm grateful for. Wouldn't it be a shame if I've launched my own business? It's been 7 years and I hated it, but I really don't. I enjoy it so, so much. So nothing really frustrates me. There are things it's hard to figure out the pricing of certain projects and deliverables because sometimes they can be a bit more like the depth of the project might be more than you anticipated. But 7 years in, I know you just structure your proposals and your engagements to account for things like that. So I think that that's with any business owner, figuring out how to price certain things can be difficult sometimes. But I think I've got it down to a pretty good science now. And again, I try not to offer what a lot of other consulting firms do is sort of tiered help. I want to be more specific and customized to what my clients need. It's a little bit more scoped, highly scoped, I'd say, to what they need, giving them a sort of a la carte. Here's some other things that could be useful and helpful for you.
Mm-hmm.
What's working for me is not outsourcing, interestingly, right? Like I find that I only take on what I can bite off what I can chew, so to speak, and I am the one doing it. So the same client that I provide the proposal to and discuss what they need and how I can bring value, they're getting me doing the work for them. Now, does that limit me to some capacity? Of course. I can't have 100 clients at a time that I'm doing everything for them. But again, by providing highly scoped project-based deliverables and being available on an ongoing basis to my clients, I find that we start with a registration, right? And then I offer, here's the ongoing services. They know, okay, what can you do in-house if you don't have the staff and support? What can you outsource to me? What's working is the flexibility of what I provide. I've had clients that have had their chief compliance officer that's been around a really long time retire. And all of a sudden they're in a panic. We need to find a chief compliance officer by X date. And if they don't, for example, that's something that I've helped with. I've been the interim chief compliance officer for firms. I've covered maternity leaves, paternity leaves. I've covered that role when this is a rarer occasion, but on the off chance that someone gets fired and they're like, we've fired our chief compliance officer. We need help working through something. Like, can you help us? And I'm like, absolutely. I always make sure that I'm available for my existing clients should something in their firm shift or change where all of a sudden they need more. And I'm available always for new clients. So I don't kind of overload myself with clients on the basis of kind of how I structure my engagements so that I always have availability to do more depending on what someone might need. Yeah, so flexibility is working, I'd say, is what I think is the best way to explain it.
So, which metrics are you focused on improving in your business?
I would say scaling. Like, I do have the desire to, at some point, probably not in the next 5 years, but I'd say between like the 5 to 10 year mark from now. So, like, once I've had my business for 10 years, and really that's on the basis of I'm in a stage of growing my family. So, I've just had my third baby. I'm not just, while work is always and will always be a large part of my life, scaling my business and taking it to that next level would take something away from my day to day that I get with the flexibility that I have right now. So I do plan on growing and scaling and taking my business further, but I don't have any immediate desire to do that. I love what I do. I love, like I said, who I get to work with, what I get to do, and that I get new clients, all the time. But I don't really need to have a ton of different people working under me. I would like to scale and grow naturally. And I found that for now, I've gotten to do all that without needing support staff, very surprisingly. But I will say that I can see myself in 5 years when I'm done having kids, maybe considering changing up a little bit of what I do and how I do it, and perhaps at a larger scale.
And what advice would you give executives struggling to build ethical cultures during rapid growth?
I would say to lean into outsourcing. During times of rapid growth, there is no need to try to do everything under the sun by yourself, right? Especially if you or someone at your firm doesn't quite have what's needed, outsource to people that can help, outsource to technologies that can assist. Like I said, you'll always still need the human component to help you with whatever technologies you're utilizing. But that would be my recommendation is consider what can help you, where it can help you. Look for vendors and resources that you can rely on to make your life a bit easier in these times of rapid growth.
Samantha, thank you for joining us on CEO Tech Talks. You've shown how compliance, when done right, becomes a source of trust and innovation.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
To learn more about her work and resources on ethical business growth, visit c2ccompliance.com.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining CEO Tech Talks. I hope today's conversation sparked new insights and inspiration for your own leadership journey. Until next time, stay inspired, stay visionary, and keep leading with light. Brought to you by Neura AI Consulting.